Right, good evening everybody. Fire evacuation procedure for evening meetings. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening, therefore if the fire alarm goes, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire alarm is located at the rear of the room, unless the fire's at the rear of the room. Go down the stairs and meet in the Memorial Park. Note the webcast of this meeting and mobile phones please put to silence or switch them off. Apologies from absence and substitutions is Councillor Mrs Taylor is being replaced by Councillor Mrs Rowlands.
Councillor Rowland, please.
Oh, Councillor Rowlands. At one time we used to have to use the word Mrs or whatever. That seems to have gone.
I'm a liberated woman.
So I believe. Any apologies? No?
No, we don't have to wait one more.
Yeah, okay. Declarations of interest, anybody? No. Urgent matters, I have none. Minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of July. Do you agree that I sign them?
Agree.
Thank you. Licensing fees and charges. Are you going to introduce it, Mr. Darkpaper?
I will indeed.
And then we'll have the public speaking.
Good evening, councillors. The report that we're bringing to you is from page 7 in your pack this evening. I'm assuming that you've all read through the report, so I don't propose to go through it line by line. Essentially, what we're asking you to do this evening is to approve these fees to go out to consultation with the trade. So this is just the first point in proceedings, as it were. They then go out to the trade, advertised in the press. If there are any objections that cannot be resolved, then we have to come back and reconsider them. If there are no objections, then they will be adopted from the date that's displayed in the advert. As you will be aware, we've had a little bit of a sort of out of step with the taxi fees, in that between 2016 we had a full fees revision. Then the year before last there was a delay in getting those to you caused by some technical issues. So actually the fees are a fair way behind, as it were. We are looking here at a general rise of 3% across the fees. That's to reflect the inflationary costs of the authority. There are some fees and charges which have increased greater than that amount, particularly those that relate to the sort of fixtures and fittings, so plate mounts, etc., where the authority was grossly under recovering. The fee that was being charged was literally the raw cost of the item from the supplier, without any, or not even covering postage or anything like that. So there has been an increase in those fees to better reflect the costs to the authority, though in all honesty those fees are not charged particularly frequently because that is wrapped up within the overall plate issue or driver badge issue fee. So there's no substantial increase there apart from those who have damage caused to them or lose them, etc., etc. With regards to the private hire, we have removed the fee for the no booking, no ride stickers. It was previously set at something like £4 for a pair of stickers, which was again the cost of recovery, but actually charging that fee, quite frankly, costs us more to charge the fee than it does to recover it. So I've taken the decision to recommend that that fee be waived, that those stickers are now available from the compliance testing centres, who will oversee the removal of old stickers and their replacement with new ones or the issuing of new stickers in the case of new vehicles. That will make their life a lot easier because when drivers come in with faded stickers, they can simply replace them. The fact that that process will be overseen by the Compliance Testing Centre means that there won't be an availability of these stickers. People don't come in and ask for them. They'll only be applied or removed by the Compliance Testing Centre, which will streamline obviously the council process. We won't be having officers going down backwards and forwards to replace them, and drivers can quickly and easily access them. And then the last fee change is the introduction of a new zero-rated fee for ultra-low or zero-emission vehicles that are operated primarily within the town centre. So that is for Hackney carriage vehicles. We already have one such vehicle operated by one of our Hackney drivers. Obviously, we'd like to see more to make a difference to the air quality within the centre of Basingstoke, where I'm sure you're aware that we now have some air quality issues on the A339. The reason we're not proposing to bring this out to the private hire trade is that we do already have some vehicles, some Teslas, electric vehicles, but they are not primarily operated within the centre of Basingstoke. They are used for airport runs, executive runs, etc., etc. And therefore there is minimal impact upon the air quality within the town centre itself, which obviously is our primary concern. So the return on benefit to the authority is much reduced. Okay, I think that's it. Happy to take any questions or.
I think we're going to let Mr. Denning speak first, and then members can ask questions to the officer.
Good evening, Chair, Councillors and Licensing Team. Mr Draper's already touched on the Hackney. There wasn't any discussion in the document why private hire wasn't covered. He's just elaborated on it. There are cars that do spend a large amount of time in the town centre and may be benefiting from electric. I think you're missing a trick by excluding private hire from that fee. Where is that being subsidised from? Is it council fees, or is it coming out of the licensing pot that us private hires are contributing to anyway? How do vehicles coming on to the no booking, no ride stickers, how do vehicles get replacements between tests? Occasionally vehicles get involved in an accident, they go back in. We would come to you previously for stickers, but I'm not sure a compliance centre would want to give us stickers in between, or are they instructed to do so? Some fleet owners have spent hundreds of pounds purchasing these replacements over the last couple of years, since the previous printing batch was clearly inferior. Will you consider some refunds for those? Why are we again adding 3% across all items? During the review in 2016, it was suggesting the costing model would be adjusted as elements changed, and not back to the old let's whack 3% inflation on it again. That's how we got out of control last time. The last item is, when we'll be introducing improvements to the application process. One of the items we pay for within the licence is you to go out to an external organisation and check our driving licences. You pay the princely sum of £5.75 according to a Freedom of Information Act in 2015. We can give you a 4-digit code now, and you can look at that without spending that money outside. So is that something you plan to introduce, or we're going to have to wait till next year's fees? Is that something we can do this year before you put it out to press? A lot of questions. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Mark. Nice to see you in here this evening. Okay, I think I've covered most of the private hire issue at this point in time. We are looking at a range of different air quality measures across the district. At this point in time, the feeling is that Hackney's will be the quickest win, if you like. I don't think there's any issue about the authority's ability to consider other pricing models if we find that that is the situation. So I'm not closing the door on that one. Where is it funded from? Well, contrary to popular belief, the trade only pays a relatively small part of the licensing fee. So, for example, we cannot legally charge for driver enforcement. That's a cost that's already absorbed by the authority, as well as the other operating costs of the licensing team for its other licensing functions. So the cost of this will simply be absorbed by the authority. It's not being passed on. It's not being redistributed to any other members of the trade. That would be illegal, and we are not doing it. Okay, hopefully your mind is at rest for that. With regards to the no booking, no ride stickers, yes, the compliance centre will happily see you out of normal compliance test periods.
You suggested they would fit them. Are there any liability issues if there was damage to the vehicle in doing so?
Well, my understanding, as I say, we're still speaking to we've already got agreement from one of the compliance test centres, and I'm looking to speak to the other one. Is that they will be happy to fit them. If that changes, ultimately it is a matter for them. My choice of going out to the compliance testing centres was so that the supply of these items was controlled. Yeah. I'm not particularly bothered whether they're fitted by the trade or fitted by the compliance centre. I just don't want anybody, Tom, Dick or Harry, marshalling into anywhere and going, I'd like a couple of taxi stickers, please. Yeah. Okay. With regards to the refunds for the defective stickers, I think it would be virtually impossible for us to ascertain those at this point in time now. And it would certainly be a very complex and time-consuming element that we would probably end up being incorporated into your fees for further time round. So, yeah, if you really want to.
There's been a lot of them.
There, I know that, yes, and we've already put our hand up to it and accepted that they were not of the standard we'd wished. With regard to your query about the 3% inflation, yes, I understand your point, and I think your point is well made about long-standing, just knock it up by inflation each year. It's not our intention to do this for the next round. We will be looking at recalculation of fees, and this comes back to the points that your next 2 points, which is the application process. We are just about to purchase from our supplier a fully electronic application system, which will allow all drivers and all operators to license vehicles and drivers electronically online. Obviously, that will not appear straight away. There will be an introductory period for that. So the reason that I haven't looked to change the fees at this point in time is because it's a little unclear as to when that will be in a position we can actually roll it out live for the trade. But that purchase has already been agreed, and we'll be looking to implement that in the new year.
Test it for you if you wish.
Thank you. Well, also, I take your point with regard to the DVLA check as well, and again, when we move to the new electronic forms, that will be incorporated within it. And when we bring those electronic forms in, we will then undertake a full review of the costings of the authority, and we will make any changes to the fees as appropriate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, questions to officers.
Most of the questions will be answered. The only one outstanding, in the past, they've always put the percentage change on, so I don't have to sit there and work it all out every time.
Oh,
It just means adding a column with a percentage change. If you can do that in the future, it'd be really helpful.
Okay, I can assure you, councillor, that the fees are a straightforward 3% increase. As I don't know if I'm in the.
Change of vehicle registration plate, £76 to 78. 3% increase would be £2.18. You've only increased it by £2, so it's slightly less than 3%. Yeah, but just by having that percentage, you can see roughly, and it's good that you put a mark when it's wildly off from that. But in the past, they would just do a massive change with no explanation, so we'd have to sit there and ask everyone. At least with that, you can look down and say, well, yeah, that's a good answer. Carry on.
Yes, I mean, apologies if my mathematics is a little bit squiffy. Yeah, as I say, they're rounded up one spreadsheet. But say the aim is to ensure, as I say, that I've also looked at removing some of there's been a slight change to the fee structure. We've removed some of the fees like the road, the no road, no fee stickers. And as I say, on the whole, it's a straightforward 3% across the thing. Yeah, that's fine. Noted.
Councillor Putty.
Thank you, Chairman. With regards to zero emission or low emission, who is going to monitor that, and how are we going to be looking at contractors to do that, or how are we going to really assess as to where we are?
I don't think we'll need to go to that extent, it has to be said. Every vehicle that is licensed by the authority, we are legally bound to keep a record of its manufacturer model, and therefore we'll be able to very quickly search for those manufacturers and models. At this point in time, there is only one type of hackney carriage which would meet that criteria, and that's the New London hybrid taxi. Now, I'm sure that over the next few years we will get more zero or very low emissions vehicles coming onto the fleet, and that's why this is a 3-year time limited, I won't say offer, but you know, it's to encourage the early adopters within the trade. So I don't anticipate us having to get anybody involved other than our standard licensing team.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the low emissions, I've got a bit of concern when you're saying that we're talking about the town. Yes, we do get a lot of traffic in the town, but we also get it elsewhere. And what for the future, I don't know if I'd like to do it now, but obviously we're not talking now. When we're talking about hackney carriages, they would be not charged, but the private hire will. The fleets are bigger, the private hire fleets are bigger, and if they've got a lot of electric cars or hybrids, surely we should be looking at reducing their fees on those cars. Because one, it'd be better obviously for the town, but the town, I'm talking Kemp Shop, Thorny Cross roundabout as you go out, it all gets blocked up with traffic, and I think we had a couple of councils ago, we had someone coming in telling us about where they monitored some of the high emissions, and we should be looking at that if we can't do it now, but we should actually have it on to do in the future very soon, I would say. I just wonder where you are on that one. And I heard your response before. I'm not happy with that response, to make that clear. I think we should be going further. My second thing is about the charges. I understand the 3%, no problem with that. But it's not 3% on if, for instance, a plate costs £10, you're not going to automatically put 3% on the cost. If you're buying it for £10, you're not going to make it 13, so there's a profit out of it, because that's what we tried to stop before. If that's making.
Okay, so I think that it would be fair to say that, and I'm sure there are councillors here who sit on other committees, that there is a movement across the authority to improve air quality on a wider basis, which the licensing team are perfectly in support of. I think in fact I know the reason that we have gone for the hackney carriage at this point in time is to achieve the greatest impact within town, as I've already said. Fortunately, the Basingstoke area is generally best with pretty good air quality, and certainly air quality in the more rural areas is not of any level of concern, particularly at this point in time. What we would like to do, and what we are moving towards, is a wider scheme for taxi drivers and private hire drivers, looking at perhaps expanding sort of charging points and those sorts of issues primarily within the centre of town, but that would obviously allow anybody else to come in and use them as well. This is a fee for this year. And for the next 3 years on this, we need to look at our fees generally. This is an encouragement, shall we say, for early adopters of what is a very expensive vehicle. There is no choice of that vehicle at this point in time. There is only one. They retail at about £65,000, which is a substantial investment for any Hackney carriage operator. So this is just to encourage that, as it were. In the future, and obviously we review our fees on an annual basis, we would be setting fees to do on a cost recovery basis. Yeah, if the councillors take the decision to subsidise the trade, to bring in more electric vehicles on a wider basis, then that's obviously something for councillors to decide upon, and that would have a greater financial impact upon the overall funding.
Sorry, I accept what you're saying, but I think it's got to be said that there is air quality problems at different times of the day, and I think that, I know you're not setting the agenda here, you're only talking about cabs, but there is a problem outside of Basingstoke, and it can be even in villages. You know, I think about Kingsclear, places like that, if there's ever traffic jams, things like that, but even as you go out, you're Chinham, out that way, Basing, and I think it's got to be recognised. We can't just write it off and say we haven't got a problem. So I know you're talking to me now, but it's said now, so because this thing ain't going to go away, we're going to have a lot more problems with this, not on this committee, but across the council about air pollution. So I thought, yeah.
Yeah, I accept your point. When I say that we haven't got problems, we only have one area within the district which is identified as having having potentially breached the air quality threshold. That we have to take statutory action on that. That doesn't mean to say that at peak periods at individual locations there may not be, peak levels, but we've got no statutory obligation to deal with those areas at this point in time. However, as I say, I'm aware that there is a general thrust to improve air quality across the district, which we are greatly in support of. Obviously, there's a large number of vehicles that are licensed by the authority over which we have influence, and we would like to encourage those vehicles to become cleaner. Now, I'm sure that the larger fleet operators would confirm that there is a general move, certainly even on the taxi trade, for newer vehicles to achieve much higher air quality standards than the older vehicles do. The policy that we introduced has looked at removing those older vehicles off the fleet with the imposition of tighter age restrictions. So we're already moving the trade in that direction. We also know that the private hire operators tend to have a much newer and cleaner fleet already than our Hackney carriage trade does. Our older vehicles tend to be in the Hackney carriage trade, but even then, most of the older ones they decline exponentially with age. So we're hopefully pushing against an open door here, as it were.
Thank you, Mrs. Rowland.
Thank you, Councillor Leeks. Just a couple of things that I'd like to, ask and be very supportive of Councillor Jones. The ward that I represent is Bramley, which we have a level crossing, which there was stationary traffic for a huge amount of time, and monitoring levels there have been shown to be very high, as recently pointed out in a Meridian television report, as well as Sherfield-on-Loddon, which has the A33, which is at standstill a majority of the time. And I would like to see more emphasis on some of the private hires, which you've said tend to be airport runs, etc., but they do run through on the A33. They do run through the rural environments and communities, taking people to join the M3 or the M4. So within the borough, we do have an issue around the pollution and what that generates. So I am very supportive of what Councillor Jones has brought up. The other side of it is how many taxis and how many private hires are within the borough, please?
Within?
Well, you're charging people, so how many people are we charging? How many organisations, how many hackneys, how many private hires? What's the numbers that are taking up these licence fees?
We've got, at last count, and Carol I'm sure will correct me if I'm wrong here, we've got 69 hackneys, if I remember correctly.
Sounds about right.
And how many privates?
350?
Yeah, so it's 340, 350.
So wouldn't you see there as an opportunity if a number of those private hires are actually, as you said, they have much better fleet cars, they have invested into newer cars, etc. Don't you think that there's an opportunity to actually extend to them that are picked up on the sort of the electric options, etc., some sort of incentive around that? Because they are within the borough and they are transporting people within the borough.
Yes, I mean the issue for the authority is a simple economic one. We can and do charge the trade the cost of certain functions, administrative functions, such as the cost of providing a badge, cost of providing a plate, etc., etc. Now we don't, as I've already explained to the panel, we don't have a full cost recovery on that. We cannot charge, for example, for driver enforcement. We can charge for vehicle enforcement, and there's an element of that within the fees. Now, if we reduce the fees to encourage a particular type of vehicle, then that cost comes out of the council's central operating budget, and is therefore a cost to the authority. And as I stated previously, if councillors wish to invest in the trade to encourage that shift to higher air quality standards, then that is obviously a decision that you may make. The steps that we've taken at the moment is there to, as I say, to support drivers of what are some very expensive vehicles into the area where they operate almost exclusively within the town centre, in areas where air quality is at a premium. So we've targeted that investment, if you like, within a relatively within the highest risk area. If we wish to move outside of that, then obviously that will have a greater impact upon the budgetary constraints. I think that what we are also looking to do in conjunction with our colleagues in transport and parking is to make a greater provision of electrical charging points and electric vehicle slots within the district and within the town, to promote the use of those vehicles, not just within the trade but also within the commuters who come in and out of the town as well.
Sorry, this isn't a question, it's just a comment, that if you were taking that model, and this is just a comment, then there wouldn't have been a reduction in car tax for vehicles that had performed, don't actually put pollution into the environment, are much more economical around fumes, etc., etc. If you were to take your argument, then those car tax charges would never have come down. They would have continued really charging. I mean, there's small cars which are £20 to put on the road, and there's some cars that are zero. And I just think that we are missing a trick here in terms of encouraging people. It's quite telling that, as you said, £65,000 is a huge investment. But if you've got private hire who have invested into electrical cars or hybrid cars, then isn't there an incentive there? It's just a comment. You've been very full in your explanation, but I just feel that as a borough we should be doing more.
Perhaps you ought to bring that up at full council.
Thank you, Chairman. There is one thing that really concerns me is shortfall in the infrastructure of charging stations, because the increase of vehicles now which require charging, because I have seen like places like Morrison where they have got charging area, and it's quite gridlock at the petrol station there because people haven't got enough charging point. And how can we really encourage not only like for us what we can do we will provide, but there are other providers as well who should come on board here. The private side, they should really bring
Councillor
in.
Putty, we're talking about fees and charges
Yeah, I
of
know,
taxis.
but I was just
You're
trying to-
straying a little bit.
Yeah, because of the vehicles that we have got, they also, because they have to work and they go and they are gridlock and they cannot really access it when they have to be really working their time to make their own money, etc.
Putting my parking hat on, as you're probably aware, we're looking at a sort of a restructure and review of our car parking areas, and I'm working with Emma Gover in our transport team to ensure an increase in the number and range of electrical charging points across our off-street car parking at the moment. Including some fast chargers up on the railway car park at the back there. So, as I say, to encourage the use of electrical vehicles for commuters. As I say, whether we can go down some specific taxi-only charging, then that's something we would be happy to look at, and we are speaking to a number of providers. But as to the private providers, not within our remit, I'm afraid, Councillor.
Right, thank you. Can we bring it back to fees and... Yes, Councillor.
I was just thinking, as a committee, can we not have a small committee to look at this for the future? Because obviously the officers are doing work, we've got ideas, and to my mind, if a few people want to sit around a table with officers, to see what can be done, what the cost factors are, because we don't know. Ideally, wouldn't want to charge anybody, but truth is we can't afford it, and that's the bottom line. So we should be talking how we can do it, what we can put forward as a paper, surely, as we do in other committees. I don't know whether it's allowed in a licensing committee because it's a statutory one.
I think
if not, perhaps we'll have to look at it through CEP or somewhere like that.
I think I'll leave that for officers to go away and think about, but we certainly can't do it tonight. It's not on the agenda. Okay, I think he's going to answer this for you, but we are leaning a little bit, straying a little bit.
Okay, just a very quick answer there. Can I just assure you, Councillor, that the as part of the work that we're doing, looking at the specific air quality issues on the 339, that report will look at broader air quality issues across the district. Because obviously the standards are only looking to be tightened, and that will, as I say, whilst we only have one exceedance at the moment, that may well bring in areas, as mentioned by Councillor Rowland, where there are other problems that aren't statutory at this point in time, but may become as the standard is tightened. So that will be something that it is already being considered by the authority.
Yeah, sorry.
Not within obviously this committee.
I do understand that. The point I was really trying to make is for the taxis and the private hire taxis you've obviously got in, but private hire, something we should be looking at for the future, what we can do to encourage this. You know, we come to a meeting here, it's not ideal to really discuss it because we're talking up what we feel rather than the facts, if you see what I mean. Perhaps we need a small committee just to look at the facts and see what can be done. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you very much. Without straying any further, have we any other questions for the officer on this paper? And Mr. Draper, did you work for a district last time? Because we're a borough.
Oh. Apologies. Sorry if did I drop back into district? Well, sorry.
I've got 5 ex-mayors in the room.
Yes. I've spent a long time in districts, but I also cover Hart as well. So and they get very unhappy when I refer to boroughs. So apologies if I've offended anybody unwittingly.
Right. Any debate? Move the recommendation. Seconded. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. The next paper is on animal welfare. I'm not sure. I think you're bringing this one, Mr. Draper, or is it Karen Hill?
Right. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, councillors. Page 17 in your papers, agenda item 6. This is a rather substantial report, and the reason that I'm accompanied by Mrs. Hill this evening is because she has been our licensing lead on this. I will, however, introduce the report to you and then hand over to Mrs. Hill if you have any technical questions about it, which it's a fairly fast-moving field, I think, at the moment, if you'll excuse the pun. Whilst we have licensed animal welfare for a long time within the authority, it's been increasingly out-of-date legislation, and as a consequence of that, we now have the new animal welfare licensing activities involving animals England Regulations 2018. Notice it's a regulation rather than anything else at this point in time. We have therefore got a whole new regulatory framework within which we are working, and a whole new style of inspection regime. For those of you who have a background or come across the environmental health one, it is very similar to the food standards. So in many, it's a risk-based. No, chuckling, please, councillor. I have environmental health in my remit as well. So it is a risk-based scheme, and in much the same way that you have scores on your doors now for your restaurants, this regulation will also bring in scores on the cage. I'm not quite sure, but anyway. Scores on the pen for a whole range of licensable animal-related activities. Now, as you can see, there are a whole range of things here, and we've included the now very out-of-date DEFRA guidance on the grounds that we're virtually getting a new set of guidance a week at the moment from them, which is, as I say, why Mrs. Hill's here, because she keeps on top of those. But primarily, it's here for your information and awareness, and also to approve the revised fees for this. Now, we've had to calculate these from scratch. So I've sat down with the joy of the spreadsheet and calculated the fees based on our best estimates, and I stress it is an estimate of the time the new regime may take us. Key, for example, is the fact that we will now have to do for 2 inspections where we used to do 1 for all premises. So, you know, there's an increase in our costs there to start off with. We have also had specific guidance from DEFRA saying that it is not acceptable for us simply to roll over our previous fee structure, and that we have to develop a new and more appropriate one. It is therefore likely that next year we will be coming back to you with a revised set of fees based on our experience from undertaking it this year. I can't say whether they're going to go up or whether they're going to go down. But all we've done, and I've been working very closely with Karen, is make our best estimate of the fees and the costs that we will incur this year. Also, It's the first time we've run it, and it's the first time, obviously, the animal welfare premises have experienced it as well. So it's probably a little bit slower this year. But that is the state of play as far as I'm going to become involved in it. I now hand you over to Mrs. Hill if you want to ask anything technical.
So, just to understand some of the definitions, what does exhibition activity, where it's animals involved in exhibition activity, what does that actually mean? Because it could be a whole raft of different things, couldn't it?
Yeah, you're right, it is. The previous legislation required any performing animals needed to be on a register. There was no fee for it. Hampshire County Council Trading Standards managed that, and it was just basically a list. Anybody that had a performing animal, wherever it was, would have to register the authority where the animal was performing. That's all changed, and now the requirement is if you train or have animals that you are then going to exhibit. So it's train or look after animals that you're going to exhibit. So now it's where those animals are based. So if they go out from anywhere, from their base, anywhere to be, and that could be for TV, or it could be just to the local fete, for a little petting area, anything is all covered under the new legislation.
So, sorry, if I could just clarify, that's not things like horses going out to compete and all of those sorts of things?
Competition. This is, and the exhibition is for entertainment, or it can be for education.
Councillor Garner?
That answered one of my questions, which was I was going to ask about dog shows, but you covered that. On page 22, paragraph 3.5, you've talked about a recognised level 3 qualification or a formal veterinary qualification. Do any of our staff have these qualifications at the moment? If not, what's it going to cost us to get adequate numbers of staff qualified?
Yeah, we'll tag team this one this evening. Okay, so at this point in time, none of our officers hold this level qualification. We have effectively a dispensation for people who've been carrying out this role for at least a year. So Karen, who does most of our inspections, and Laura Yates, our dog warden, who also assists, will be inspecting them based on their previous experience. Ultimately, we will be moving to get those officers, in fact, probably Andrew Wake as well, through the qualification. At this point in time, there is only one provider, the City of London, who have been, I think, is the phrase, early adopters of this, and because they have an unchallenged position within the marketplace at this point in time, are charging a comfortable sum. I think it's £1,000, £1,500 per course. Strangely enough, we've decided that we don't need to rush into this because we have an existing skill base within the team. And we are led to believe by the Institute of Licensing, with which we are corporate members, that they will be developing their own course in the near future. And it is highly likely that some of the other animal colleges will also be developing courses as well as the market develops. So we've taken the decision to hold off training for the next 18 months until the market settles down. So in answer to your question, Councillor, £1,000 a pop at the moment, but I'm hoping that will decrease markedly when some competition comes in.
Councillor, sorry.
You say when exactly do we think we're going to actually need to get our officers trained?
The legislation allows us a 2-year period.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question on the dog breeders. The inspection process. How is it carried out and how often?
The regulations, as previous legislation, requires that the initial inspection, there's a vet that has to go out, an independent vet, as well as a council officer. Then subsequent years, there just needs to be a council officer.
Just another how many dog breeders are there in the borough, and how many people actually go out? Because my theory is, I'm coming from a personal perspective, where I only take in rescue dogs, and I see where people are mass breeding at the moment, the damage they do to the dogs. So my word is this just going to be, all right, we've got it on paper and this is what we're supposed to be doing, but are we actually doing this? So,
We currently have 2 licensed breeders in the borough, but since this new legislation's come out, I've been contacted by at least 10, because there is a lot more information that's going out through vets, through the Kennel Club, etc. People are becoming more aware of it, and the whole basis of it was to really tighten up. The new legislation says that if there's because for every other activity there's a business test. It has to be running as a business. You have to earn money or charge a fee or commission. So for dog breeders, what that used to be previously, if you had 5 or more litters, you needed a license, and any less than that, that was the business test again. But they've dropped that down to 3. So anybody that has 3 or more litters has to have a license, no questions. Below that, so 1 or 2 litters in a 12-month period, you have to evidence that they're running as a business. But what we're doing, we're taking the view that if you're charging for puppies, which can be phenomenal amount of money, you're likely to be running as a business, because you're earning that. You're charging a fee, you're advertising, so you're earning that money. So although at the moment we are finding people are coming to us, we will have an active programme of going through the vets, of going through the Kennel Club, anywhere we see litters advertised on the websites, we will do much more proactive investigation. At the moment we are concentrating on the ones that we've got, because most of our licences end at the end of the year, on the 31st of December, and of course at the moment we're prioritising them till we can get those up and running under the new regime. But the breeders, one of the reasons that the regulations came in was to tighten up on the breeders. It is a recognised problem. Does that answer your question?
just another question, just going off a little bit, is what do groups like the RSPCA think of this new legislation?
I think they have been involved in all of the consultation. DEFRA has led on it, but what they think as a business, I couldn't really comment, to be perfectly honest. But I know they were involved in there was a lot of consultation went out before the new regulations were put in place.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can you tell me what has been done to inform people who've got animals who haven't needed licences before that they will need a licence from now on?
As I said before, we are concentrating on our existing licence holders. We are making sure that they have been kept fully informed, and that they're all starting to apply now, so we can get the inspections out and get them licensed. But we there will be, I presume, through our normal communication process, that we will contact anybody we've had contact with before. We will be contacting. But then there's the other routes. It's general, as it has been previously. It's finding out where people advertise and taking it from there.
Yeah.
Just to supplement the answer a little bit, sorry, Karen. There are a relatively small number of people who wouldn't previously have been licensed who now fall within the licensing regime. Those are almost exclusively the dog breeders. So there are some of the performing animals side, but other than that, they are people such as the riding establishments, the vets, sorry, not the vets, the pet shops, the catteries and the kennels who we have traditionally licensed. So as far as we are aware at this point in time, there isn't a large number of other ones, but we do know that the dog breeding one is one where we're going to have to devote some resource. And as I say, those ones are where we're focusing our efforts through the vets and the Kennel Club and stuff like that. But there's been a lot of discussion about this within the wider community, if you like. All the magazines, the vets have notices about it anyway, because it's such a big change. But as I say, the number of new groups, if you like, is very small.
Councillor Jones, do you want to speak?
It's only a quickie. I don't know much about this one, but it's just crossed my mind. Are we going to sort of do some advertising from the borough's perspective, saying, with the local papers, that there is a need for licensing, especially when we're talking about dog breeders, because that to me it seems some of them aren't up to standard. But there's no excuse if we actually do send out an advertising type campaign. I don't know how much it costs, whether would it be cost effective or whatever, but something so the public knows what should happen. So if we do come across people, go and buy a dog, well, they can ask, are you licensed? You see where I'm coming from? I just wonder whether you've got anything in mind for that sort of thing, for locally, for the borough.
Yes, I come back to Karen's point, which is at the moment we're focusing on our existing licensed premises. We've got enough to do to get through those in the next sort of 2 or 3 months, because they are traditionally concentrated at license renewal period is the end of the year. That's because how the previous legislation was set. So we've got a bulk of those. Once we've processed those and issued our licenses and done all the work we'll do, we will then engage in some proactive advertisement, predominantly through the circulations that the council traditionally uses to communicate with its residents. I don't think there's need to undertake any additional paid advertising. As you say, it is. Your point is excellently made about just raising awareness about people purchasing animals, what they should look for. But as I said, there's already an awful lot of that going on at the moment, and that will only increase as time goes on. But yes, we will put it out in the council's routine communications.
Councillor Garner.
By routine communications, does that mean that we'll see something in the December issue of the council's newspaper that goes out to every resident?
No. We won't put out in the December issue, simply on the grounds that we're going to be absolutely flat out dealing with all our other ones at that point in time. I appreciate your concern, but at the end of the day, we have a very limited resource to tackle this at this point in time. We will go out in the following issue.
We have a communications department that could handle it for you.
It's not the communications that I'm worried about. The communications is we work very closely with our comms team. That's not the issue. It's whether we generate a large number of complaints or inquiries, and a lot of it is inquiries, unfortunately, from people about asking legitimate questions, which is fine, but we just don't have the resource to deal with that effectively. That we have Karen, who also has another day job doing licensing, all the other things that we license as well, as I say, and Laura, the dog warden, who, strange enough, is out there dealing with the strays, and Andrew Wake, who does our riding establishments. But as I say, there's a limited amount of resource, and as I say, if I thought there was no information going out there, that there was a vacuum of this information, but the reality is, if you pick up any of the magazines in the shops which have a little doggy or a little catty on the front, the animal welfare regulations are writ large across it. And certainly all the vets are very much primed. All the RSPCA, the Blue Cross, etc., again, are all very much engaged with this. To echo the comments about what is the RSPCA, well, we don't speak for the RSPCA, but they are encouraging this very much, because obviously it improves animal welfare standards, and we're all in the same game there.
Thank you, Chairman. Page 24 at the risk management 7.2 and 7.3, those two main risks that's been identified there, what measures are being put to really see that we don't face the burden from the council general fund, or have businesses which are unregulated after the March 2019?
I can assure you that that I spent a considerable period of time looking at our fees and building fees based on a proven model that we use within the department to calculate things like the taxi licence fees and other fees which we have control of. So we believe that the fees we have set are representative of those that are incurred by the authority. Now, as I explained at the start of the proceedings, that there's a certain level of estimate in there, but that's all we can do at this point in time. These fees can be because they are fees set by ourselves. These fees can be reviewed on an annual basis at this meeting in next year, and if we have under recovered, well, obviously that's a risk to the authority, and likewise we don't want to be charging the premises, well, it would be illegal for us to charge them substantially above the cost recovery level.
Thank you very much. Debate. If there's no nothing. Move the recommendation for the licensing committee set out on page 18. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. And the last bit is subcommittees for noting item 7. Okay. Thank you very much. Have a safe journey home.
Thank you, councillors, for your time.